You're listening to 88.7 WLUW Chicago Sound Alliance, recording live from the campus of Loyola University. It's live from the Heartland, featuring Katy, Hogan, and Thom Clark. Today, our guests are journalist Monroe Anderson and Iris Waichler, author on aging. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
All right. Kev Mo starting us off again like he always does here live from the Heartland. It's Saturday morning, 9 a.m. And here we are, Thom Clark.
Good morning, Katy.
Katy Hogan here, and we're greeting our missing bro. He's out east taking care of family. But we're real glad to be here. It's a gray day right now, so it's a normal March 30th, right?
It's pretty much a normal March 30th.
Yeah.
We may have some snow in the morning.
Oh,
But after that, spring.
Dang.
We got green stuff coming up in our yard. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and the street cleaning begins this week. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, watch those signs and don't get caught with the first ticket of spring.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I understand the president was in Michigan lying about the Great Lakes this week.
My head is ready to explode.
Every single day there's a head exploding thing. What was yours this week?
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch the Michigan thing because I had enough mendacity.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a diversion of cutting the Special Olympics, which he then took back. Thank you, Betsy DeVos. She must love working for him. You have the effort to turn down the Affordable Care Act through court rather than legislative action. You have the humanitarian crisis at the border. You have selling nukes to the Saudis. That came back up in the news today. Jeez. You have the Golan Heights heist, as I call it, although in all things war, I guess if you get the land, you get to keep it. But that's going to lead to another Midwest war, which I think is what John Bolton really wants there. And all the exoneration BS, when we haven't even friggin' seen the whole Mueller report yet.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's
what's
enough.
the news?
Well, there was what you called the white privilege outrage of the week, which is the Jussie Smollett thing, Rahm's rant on Jussie Smollett. I don't even want to talk about it, to tell you the truth. It's such a screw up. Let's wait and get Monroe's ideas about what he saw happen there. It's just such an incredible waste of time and energy. And
I'll wait for Monroe too, because I have a few thoughts about this one. But I'd love for you, Katy, to share a few thoughts about this debate watch party we had in the neighborhood this past week. To set the scene, we had a house that was maybe favoring Tony, but almost as many people Lori, and almost as many people undecided. At least I saw it as a one-third house. And rather than a lot of kind of Facebook yelling back and forth at each other, it's a pretty amazing.
Why would we ever expect our group to talk that way to each other? That's just for anonymity and BS. No, I don't ever want to compare what Network 49 puts together for our neighbors to be as good as we can be on politics, to resemble anything that's going on out there in the way of hate speech and knocking each other around and just my opinion is better than your facts, all of that junk. No, it was a wonderful gathering. I was reminded of the time at the Heartland when we first did a debate watching event, and that was for Obama in 2008. And it was so moving to have the entire outdoor patio. And as people got off the L and saw what was going on, they sat themselves all along the garden and in the risers. And it was, however many dozens of people, over 100, silent, listening.
Yeah.
And my heart was overwhelmed with, I love my community for caring about their civic duty. And it brought it back to me this past Wednesday when we had the Teal Room full and people listening and people, as you said, holding different points of view, but significantly in our group, still undecideds. And I feel like that's going on all over the city, and I'm just afraid. I don't want the next mayor chosen by, 50% of 30% of the voters.
Exactly, and it's It is an historic election, not only because of the two finalists that we have, but they both represent a change of some kind, and I think for the better. And so to sit this one out because you're not sure is really giving up one of those two basic parts of small d democracy that people seem to shirk away from. Politics is dirty, so I'm not going to vote, and jury duty. And to my mind, these are two things that we really need to bring back with some passion if we can figure out how to do it, because they are only checks against what else is happening, as far as I'm concerned. And we showed in the 49th Ward that we can shift and change by engaging people and talking civilly, I think, is really the point I was trying to make before. We're too used to...
Did you think we were going to throw glasses at each other and stuff?
I think the tenor of political debate these days has turned off so many folks, they don't know what to expect in a public setting like that.
Well, when we're running it,
So hats off to our neighbors for doing a serious, reasoned discussion that I think convinced some folks, and I know from phone calls afterwards, there's still some undecideds.
Right. So just so that people know, this is the final weekend. This is normally in a real head-to-head race, the get out the vote weekend. And for those of you who know who you care about, go to your neighbors and tell them about it, and encourage people to vote. I think it would be a real blot on our civic duty if we chose an open seat mayoral candidate with less than 50% of the voters, which we are about to do. So canvass for Tony, canvass for Lori, canvass for one of the many tight aldermanic races, which we'll also go into depth with Monroe about, I hope.
So we want to be sure people know that there's a town hall meeting later today at the Rogers Park Library from 2:30 to 4:30. Our newly elected alderwoman, Maria Haddon, will be there to take your questions and comments as we forge a new future for Rogers Park. We also want to tip our hat to the striking musicians, the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This is a very fascinating civic effort that's going on right now. A lot of people might wonder, why should we be concerned about the symphony? Well, besides the fact that it's a world-class symphony, and yes, these guys get paid a lot, but they are the world's best musicians, and they actually are paid right now.
There's some of the world's best musicians. Let's not be jingoistic about it,
They are paid less than several other major orchestras in the country, and they have gone on strike now, going into their third week, trying to get a better contract.
Yeah, it's mostly about the pension plan and the substitute 401k idea. So take a minute to support them. You can call Jeff Alexander to get to the management's office, 312-924-3000. Yeah, CSO.
A recent guest, our Irish fiddler, Katy Grennan, will be on Channel 11 Sunday night with a Irish pub tour show. And coming up on April 4th, reporting on race and riots, 1919 to the present. This phenomenal group on the South Side City Bureau is having another one of their public newsrooms at the Experimental Station from 6 to 8 p.m. on April 4th. That's at 6100 South Blackstone. And
tonight is the 30th anniversary of the Nelson Algren Committee celebrating Nelson Algren's birthday. He'd be 110. For those of you who don't know about the man who wrote The Man with the Golden Arm, it's part of Chicago lore and history, and this group will have a lot of things going on tonight at the Bloomingdale address, 2418 West Bloomingdale. Shake your booty with some literati. I
love that.
I think what's his name is getting a prize. Ben Jarafsky is getting the award today. One of the awards, they hand them out. I was lucky enough to get one back in the early days of the event. It was very nice.
And we want to mark the passing as well this week of an old colleague, a phenomenal journalist, Chris Chandler.
Yeah.
I know Chris best as a byline that I followed in my youth. Not that we were that far apart in age, but also many Friday night poker parties at my colleague Hank DeZutter's house, and where we really took apart the week's events and tried to figure out what the heck was going on. Chris was a dogged journalist. He understood the city, but he really was a passionate explorer of folks who were below the surface, but below the headlines that make up the fabric of the city. And of course, he was also a great cabbie later in his life because he knew the city so well.
Yeah, he's Chris Chandler was a full-on character, a fully occupying his body dude, and I had many different permutations of knowing Chris, including like decking him once on Lincoln Avenue because he wouldn't understand.
Shut up, probably.
No, it was not just shut up. But anyway, I loved him, and he was an incredible revolutionary mind, frankly.
Yes.
It's why he couldn't stick around in Harold's cabinet because he just had no boundaries, and that doesn't work in government. But he was a voice for the voiceless. He was always for the underdog, and he was always confrontational if he thought he could get a good fight out of it. Bless you, Chris Chandler, and try and go easy on the folks in the next realm. They're not ready for you quite. Last night I watched the newest Kartemquin film to hit the airwaves, the 1963 school boycott around the Willis wagons and segregation of Chicago schools. The sad thing about that documentary, it's a short one, is that we are still in the same situation. Our schools are, we need to hit the streets for the schools again. One other person who passed this week that we found out about, Mr. Leonidas Cruz, who was a dishwasher and maintenance guy at the Heartland Cafe for about 22 years. He was from El Salvador. He pretended not to speak English just so we could speak our broken Spanish to him. He was family, and he was there's a lot of stories about Leonidas going back in Heartland history, but we want to send him safely on his way as well and say a big thank you. We are going to have a little bit. You are listening to, by the way, WLUW Chicago 88.7 FM and WLUW.org Chicago. We're going to listen to Sometimes It Snows in April.